A 17-year-old boy was shot and killed by police in France after he refused to pull over during a traffic stop. The police officer who shot the boy has been placed under investigation. The boy's death has sparked protests in France, some of which have turned violent. President Emmanuel Macron has called the violence on the streets unjustifiable. China is investing heavily in wind and solar power, which could help limit global carbon emissions. The country's green energy targets for 2030 look set to be exceeded 5 years ahead of schedule. However, China is also building more coal plants, which could undermine its efforts to reduce carbon emissions. This could be a double-edged sword, as it could help China meet its energy needs in the short term, but could also lead to higher carbon emissions in the long term. Ultimately, it remains to be seen whether China's investment in renewable energy will be enough to offset its reliance on coal. Rahul Gandhi, the leader of India's opposition Congress Party, was stopped by police in Manipur state while on a visit to meet people displaced by violence. The violence between the majority Meitei and Kuki communities has killed more than 100 people and wounded over 400. Police said they stopped Gandhi's convoy for his security, but Congress leaders accused the government of using autocratic methods to stall his visit. Sri Lanka has begun a 5-day bank holiday to allow the crisis-hit nation to restructure $42 billion, £33.2 billion, in domestic debt. The move comes as the country is struggling to come out of its worst economic crisis. The government has announced a 30% haircut, or reduction, on some government bonds held by international lenders. However, banks and private lenders will not be affected by the domestic debt restructuring. The World Bank has just granted Sri Lanka $700 million, following a $3 billion bailout package from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Protesters in Baghdad breached the perimeter of the Swedish embassy on Thursday after a man burned a copy of the Quran in Sweden. The protests were organized by Iraqi Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, who also called for the expulsion of the Swedish ambassador. Swedish officials said embassy staff were safe and in contact with the government. This is the second time in 2023 that Iraqi protesters have clashed with security forces outside the Swedish embassy in Baghdad over the burning of the Quran in Sweden. Madonna was hospitalized on Saturday due to a serious bacterial infection. She was in intensive care but is now no longer in intensive care and is receiving treatment in a New York hospital. Her manager said she is expected to make a full recovery. Many celebrities have sent messages of support to the star, including Rosanna Arquette, The Weeknd, and Gwendolyn Christie. Eid al-Adha is one of the most important Islamic festivals. It commemorates the Prophet Ibrahim's willingness to sacrifice his son on God's orders and is marked by special prayers and feasts. This year, Eid al-Adha begins on June 28 and coincides with the end of the Hajj, the annual Islamic pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca.